I'm going to turn back to Ben again, looking at boards themselves. And you'd mentioned a little bit of this earlier on, but how should boards think about force majeure, customer notification obligations, insurance notice, regulatory reporting before an actual incident occurs?
Yeah, I think it all goes back into the kind of what you're planning, right? And so I think companies have typically are going to have kind of written incident response plans that document what they're going to do, which is great, but those can get stale. They can sit on a shelf. People can kind of forget what their role is in that process. And so I think what boards can do is make sure that management has active plans in place to stress test those, doing tabletop exercises, running scenarios to make sure that those things, people are staying fresh on them. They know their roles. And that I think when you do those exercises, I've seen it when we've done it with companies, is it identifies holes in your plans that you maybe don't see when you just write it out or you get a consultant to help you prepare an incident response plan. It looks great on paper, but then you start doing it and you're like, wait a second, we didn't deal with this, so we're going to have to figure that out. And I would say make sure you're involving legal in that function too. I mean, obviously operations needs to be involved, health and safety, but make sure legal is in that group too. I know no one likes to invite the lawyers to the party, but sometimes they have to show up every once in a while. And I think this is a spot where they can provide some value and make sure that on some of these other things that are maybe secondary to your operation, secondary to sort of human health and safety, but are ultimately going to be important to your enterprise and important to hopefully minimizing the headaches created by these events, to put in place those things in terms of insurance notifications, customer notifications, appropriate protections for attorney-client privilege, document preservation, making sure that those are baked into your plans and that those are drilled, so that when a crisis does happen, while that's unfortunate, you're ready to respond in a way that hits all these work streams.
Great. We do have a question that has come in, so I'll just toss this out and one of y'all can pick it up. What is the one governance mechanism every board should implement now to translate U.S. Iran conflict risk into faster, better enterprise decisions?
Julie, I'm happy to jump in quickly here. I would ensure that this type of conflict is acknowledged, included in the enterprise risk profile at every company. So ensuring that, I'm thinking about lots of different companies, and I'm not sure this was on a lot of enterprise risk matrix. And so I think it's important to make sure that it is added and that there are mitigants that you're implementing and addressing if it's something that's impacting your company.
I would add on, this is a great point that Tina made. I would add on that we live in a rolling state of conflict now. We talk about Iran, we talk about a ceasefire, or I'm sorry, a peace deal, but then in the same breath, we're like, and we're going to swing by Cuba on the way back. And you're like, whoa, okay. And then what comes next after that? So it's really a question of understanding what comes next. What happens if we start to attack the Mexican cartels with physical, with military strikes? What does that do to everyone's risk profile in Latin America, especially between Colombia, Peru, and all the way up to the U.S. border? So I think to Tina's point, it's easy to focus on Iran, but we have to also focus on, hey, what do we hear in signaling, messaging, and from our people on the ground for the next conflict? It's not a question of it's going to happen; it's going to happen. But what's my team in the Philippines telling me? Maybe I'm missing something there. Or hey, what does this election mean in Belarus? And that I need to be watching. And finally, I'll say just in our own backyard, we ended up helping a number of clients in the United States in January when the ice storm hit, and a whole number of families and employees were trapped. No power, no water, no fuel. Ice couldn't get out. Who's going to come get you? Like, think about your own backyard as well.
We do have another question that came in, and we may have touched on this, but I don't want to ignore this. What are the best questions to ask management, and what advice should we give them to handle a crisis when operational and financial impacts are immediate, but response plans are longer term?
I would ask, when's the last time you did a crisis management exercise and who's on the teams, right? Is it cut across the entire company? And then is security and safety, is that a primary role or a secondary role? Ben and Tina both hit on this. Is it somebody's second responsibility that they kind of are aware that they have, but they haven't exercised it? So if I know the last time you've exercised a crisis management, and I know that it's touched all aspects of your company, and did you pull your vendors into it as well that are going to be part of the crisis mitigation, then I know that at least you've exercised the systems and processes. So no matter what the crisis is, it could be a disease, could be a wildfire, could be weather related, could be a war. I know the system and process at least we've used the muscles recently, and people at least are aware of what their jobs are, what went well, and frankly, what didn't. If they haven't done a crisis management exercise recently, or if it doesn't cross the entire company, and if it doesn't bring in all their vendors, you're likely not ready for what's coming next.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think the tabletop exercise is kind of the right mechanism to ask the questions because you just say, okay, this happens. What do you do next, right? And then see how management responds to that in terms of who's going to be notified. How do we loop in the right folks? What's our process for, communicating with employees? All those things, right? And that those questions, an example, I think, is going to help to prompt better questions and better analysis as to whether management and your organization are prepared to deal with something rather than sort of just in the abstract, oh, do we have an incident response plan? Oh, yeah, we do. It's 100 pages long. We've got all these different scenarios. Oh, okay, great. But then ask the tough question. Okay, let's say this happens. What do you do next? And I think that's where you're going to see, is your organization prepared, or are there maybe some breakdowns that need to be worked through as part of this process?
It's great. Um, I've got one more question on the chat, then I've got another one, and then we'll need to wrap up, which is unfortunate because I'm loving the conversation. But the question that came in is, how should the board think about balancing a rigorous governance framework, which can take time to build, with the need to remain agile and make timely decisions in an environment that is changing ever more rapidly, sometimes daily or even hourly, especially when the events are unexpected? So what's that? How do you balance that?
I think it's the flexibility of your support that's there. This is a really tough question because it's, hey, how do we adapt to the modern, complex, dynamic, and frankly, turbulent and violent world? It comes back to if you try to prepare for every single thing out there, it's likely you're not going to be ready, right? You're never going to get specifically where you need to go. But is the system and process that we have in place agile? Is it adaptable? Are we able to surge and move? Because the reality is, you should travel and go see the world. You should expand your business, right? You shouldn't live in a world of fear. Like that's the last thing you want. I know we've been talking about a lot of scary things today. Check to make sure that your system and process is going to be able to maneuver and work for it and give you options when the next crisis comes in. If you have that right partnership with your vendors and your teams out there, you're in a great position to survive and to expand and grow. What was it that Rothschild said? When the guns are firing, you should be buying. And there was some version of that. He's not wrong. There's opportunity in all of this. Is your system able to adapt and put you in position to be able to take advantage of those and to expand and win for your team?
The one thing I would also add is when you think about how quickly decisions have to be made in that type of a changing, very rapidly changing environment, is being clear who has that decision and making sure that they're empowered to make those decisions. Otherwise, you're going to get bogged down into delays and checking every box. So clarity of who has the decision rights, it can quickly turn around rapid impacts.
Yeah, I guess the only thing, excellent points. I would just add that it just reinforces the idea that when you are taking on the responsibility of being a board member on a board of directors, this is not just coming in for a quarterly meeting anymore. This is having to be responsible, available, and really being able to help guide the companies that you're responsible and your shareholders that you're responsible to. So thank you for that.